So cheers everyone. So this time around I wanted to do something completely different. Instead of my usual wheel reviews and maintenance videos, I wanted to have a discussion on how leagues should not treat their referees. Some simple do's and don'ts that will keep your refs coming back. Now recently I've noticed a lot of games in my area being canceled for lack of referees. This is something I never used to hear happen back when I first started about 8 years ago. So I decided to take to Reddit and other online forums and ask the questions. What are some things their leagues do? Ask some refs what are things that they have had done that would cause them not to come back. And I compiled 12 what I think are essential things that every league should be doing to keep their refs happy and coming back. The best part is most of these, in fact the first 10, are completely free. Will cost your league nothing. There's only a couple of them that will have a small cost to them. But most of them are completely free and there's no reason your league shouldn't be doing them. Now I know that everything varies a little bit from location to location, but I was getting messages from people all over the world. They all seem to be experiencing pretty much the same issues. And of course, staff often changes. And if you're not doing these things, you may think that, well, maybe your staff just left because they moved or quit Derby or did whatever. Oftentimes, your leagues may be doing these things. It's alienating your referees, your NSOs, and your support staff, and they're leaving and you don't even know it. So I'm going to do my best to tell you what these things are. Again, I've compiled what I think are the 12 most important, and at the end I have a few, about a half a dozen little tips that'll just sort of niceties, but these are the important ones. So, and I would love to do a part 2 of this, by the way, too. So if you think I've missed anything, comment down below, tell me what your league does or doesn't do that you think is good or a problem. All I ask is you don't mention any specific names. This is not meant to shame anybody. It's just meant to start a dialogue of how we can keep things moving. There needs to be a symbiotic relationship. The refs need the skaters need the refs. Without one or the other, the games simply don't happen. So, number 1, this is a very simple and easy one, and that is recruiting. Now, many leagues will have a recruiting night. They create an event page or they print out some flyers. You need to put on there that you are also looking for co-ed refs and non-skating officials. If people don't know you're looking for them, they won't think to ask or volunteer. So it's a really simple thing, but I've seen flyers and stuff where they simply don't bother to put that. They talk about the skaters and the age and restrictions and that kind of stuff. They don't mention anything about referees. So you need to let people know that you're looking for them. Now number 2, now this is probably the absolute most important one. And this is, referees need to be league members. Now oftentimes this is literally nothing more than adding them to your Facebook group page. But this is very, very important. There's a league recently I had heard of that without any notice just decided that refs and NSOs were no longer league members, kicked them off the Facebook page without even telling them. That is absolutely horrible. This should not be done. And it's free. It doesn't cost anything to allow them to be on the Facebook page. Now the reason most people join a sports team, whether it's roller derby or whether it's baseball, soccer, basketball, whatever, it doesn't matter, is because they want to be part of that team. It's a team dynamic. There's a social aspect of being part of a team. If you don't allow your refs and NSOs to be part of that team and consider them outsiders, they will leave. They need to feel like they're appreciated, they're wanted, and they're part of that team. And it costs nothing to simply allow them to be part of the Facebook page. Now, many leagues will require, a minimum attendance to be part of that team or considered a league member and part of the Facebook page, and that's perfectly normal. They have to show up a certain number of days a week. And some leagues allow their refs, voting privileges, some don't. That's up to you guys. It really doesn't matter. The point is they have to be considered part of the team, part of the league. All right, so, and even if it's nothing more than being able to see all those Facebook posts, even if your skaters are doing nothing more than posting silly memes and chit-chatting with each other, not seeing those and not being a part of that often makes Derby become sort of out of sight and out of mind. So they need to feel like they're part of the team. I can't stress this enough. I think this is the number one most important thing. This is probably the quickest and easiest way to alienate your support staff. Now, number 3, birthdays. Now, many leagues announce their skaters' birthdays and events and things like that. Why not announce the refs as well? Some leagues don't do that. There's really no reason why not to. There's no reason not to. It costs absolutely nothing. If it's a big league, obviously you don't want to do a separate post for everyone. Just something maybe once a month, following people have birthdays, a little thing about them, maybe a photo, put it on the public page of your Facebook page. There's really no reason not to include them. It's important that your support staff feel included. The next one is practices. Now, when skating referees come to your practices, it's important that they feel included and that they're doing something. Don't just relegate them off to the side, have them skate around the outside and chit-chat with each other and just simply not be a part of things. Try to include them as much as possible in the practices, in the drills, even if it's nothing more than timing drills, blowing whistles, and explaining rules and stuff to the skaters. Include them in that as much as you can. Now, if you're a coach and maybe you know the rules backwards and forwards and you like to do all that yourself, that's fine, but you really should try and relegate some of these things to the refs so they feel included, they feel needed, they feel wanted, they will continue to come back. If they just sit in the corner and do nothing, there's no reason for them to be there, and they won't keep coming back. So number 5, let's move up to actual games. You need to be reasonable with your support staff. And what I mean by that is there's a league that will often ask their refs and NSOs to arrive 2 hours before first whistle. Why? There's literally nothing for them to do unless they're going to be part of the track crew and help set up the track and the chairs or things like that. There's no reason for a referee to be there that early if they're not a part of the track crew or something. I think 30 minutes to 45 minutes is perfectly acceptable. There's been times where I've showed up 2 hours early like they've asked. I've sat there for an hour and 50 minutes in the hot sun. The head ref shows up 10 minutes before first whistle, takes roll, and then the game starts. There's really no reason to ask somebody to be there that early if there isn't any reason to be. The next one, number 6, is those Google Forms. Now, many leagues have started using those online Google applications. So when you have a game or a tournament coming up, you post that someplace, and then your support staff, as well as visiting staff, will fill out this form, and you receive all those emails or all the forms. The problem with doing it this way is many leagues will put these out a month or 2 in advance, and then the people who fill out the forms don't receive any feedback or anything back until oftentimes days before the event, which is okay if they need you, but what if they don't need you? Here you've held open that day and maybe turned away other offers, whether it's a game or a social thing, because you think you're doing this event and you don't find out until the day of that they don't actually need you. That is a great way to have a ref never fill out that form again. Keep them informed, let them know you received the form, let them know as soon as you can when the roster is ready, when you need them, when you don't need them. And I think a good rule of thumb is 2 weeks in advance. Send everyone an email that filled out that form at least 2 weeks in advance. If you don't, they're going to wonder why you're ghosting them and eventually get annoyed and stop filling out your forms. So thank yous is another one. Now this may seem really simple, but I've been to many games where the game ends and I guess I'll go home. No thank you, not even a handshake, nothing. There should be some representative, even if it's just the head ref, comes over, gives everyone a thank you. Now it is becoming customary to hand out those little thank you cards. Those are really great. Visiting refs that aren't associated with either team should probably get a gas stipend of some sort, and it doesn't have to be much. Oftentimes I only get $10, and that usually doesn't come even close to covering my costs or my gas. But the fact that they're giving it to me is really nice, and I really appreciate it. If they're coming from really far away, you can always bump that up. You know, talk to them ahead of time and see what works for them. But most of the time, $10 is enough, even if it's just a gas card or a Starbucks card or something like that. Let's see. Next one is water. Now this seems, again, obvious, but the last game that I refed, the home team provided no water to the staff. Now a lot of leagues will provide sports drinks and energy drinks, and that's really great, but it's really not necessary. But water, I think, is a bare minimum. Provide water for your crew. And if it's cold and it's an outdoor venue, hot drinks. Tea and coffee and things like that are really helpful, especially when it's cold. Now this next one I think is also very important, and this is food. Now if it's a single game, it's really not necessary to provide free food to the staff. But if it's a doubleheader or a tournament, food I think is really important. Even if you're unable to provide a hot meal for free, it needs to be at least available at the venue. I've been to games where there is no food available, nothing but sugary snacks and unripe bananas. This is oftentimes not sufficient. A hot meal is really important if it's a doubleheader or above. Some of the biggest problems I've seen at games is when food is not available. I was at a doubleheader once where at the halftime of the second game, the entire crew pretty much just left. They went off to fast food restaurants to get food. So instead of a 15-minute halftime, it turned into an hour because there was no food available. And this really doesn't need to be, because pretty much every city in the US has catering trucks. Give any one of them a call, mark out a little place for them, they'll show up, park, they'll sell their tacos or whatever it is, they have drinks as well, and it costs you nothing. But having food at the venue is very important, not just for the refs, but for the skaters, for the spectators. If you come to a sporting event, you expect there to be some sort of food. So there's no excuse to not have some sort of hot food available. And again, if it's a doubleheader or a tournament, do your best to try and provide your ref and NSO crew with a hot meal or something. Number 10 is the after party. Again, this seems like a no-brainer, but I've been to games where the refs were not invited to the after party. Now, we weren't specifically told we couldn't come, we just weren't told where it was. Now, we could always grab a skater, they usually know, but they don't always have the address. So we'd ask them where it is, and we'd often get answers like, oh yeah, the after party, it's at that place, over by the thing, behind the whatchamacallit. Yeah, I'm from out of town, I don't know where any of those things are. If I don't have an address I can put into my GPS, I can't go. So it is customary for a league to tell their head ref and their head NSO where the after party is. That way they can inform their crew, everyone knows where it is. Tell the announcer, he can announce it, if possible, put it on the program. Everyone knows, there isn't any issue. I've seen ref crews say, screw it, let's just have our own after party, and they went off one place and the skaters went off someplace else. that really sucks. Number 11, travel. Now, if your league is doing an away game and it's a good distance away, and you're providing some sort of carpooling information for your skaters, you should include the refs and the NSOs in that carpool. There is no reason to make your support staff fend for themselves when it comes to driving to faraway places. This really seems obvious, but a lot of places don't, a lot of leagues simply don't do it. And the last one, and this is lodging. Now, if the away game is very far, out of state, another country, something like that, and the league is providing hotels for the skaters, that needs to be offered to the referees as well. This was my #1 biggest complaint when I was talking to people on Reddit. Refs were saying that they would drive hours and hours to these faraway places. They would ref the game, and because lodging wasn't made available to them, they drove home all night long in the middle of the night. And I've done this myself. I didn't get home till 3 and 4 in the morning. And if you're a night owl, maybe that's no big deal to you. But to a lot of people who have jobs and are up early in the morning, driving home late at night like that can be dangerous. Fall asleep, drive off the road, kill yourself. It's not worth it to put your life at risk to ref a game in another town if your league isn't going to include you in the hotels. If they're doing it for their skaters, do it for your support staff as well, or they're just not going to come. Suddenly everyone's going to be busy that day. Okay, now these are the 12 most important ones, and like I said, I think 10 of them were completely free. Your league should be doing every one of these. If you don't, you're shooting yourself in your foot. League or your refs and NSOs are going to start leaving, and you're not going to know why. Again, you're probably going to assume that they're off doing other things. Fact is, they just don't want to ref for you anymore. Okay, so I've also compiled a few tips. There's just 6 of them. They're pretty short. These are just little extras that some of the Reddit community told me that I thought were pretty cool ideas. In fact, this first one, never even thought of this before. This is a fantastic idea. And what she recommended was, whenever you have a recruiting event and you have an incoming group of fresh meat skaters, oftentimes what happens, especially in the bigger leagues, is you got your A team over here and they're practicing and doing drills and scrimmaging, and the fresh meat, they're over here being taught transitions and plow stops and things like that. And get your ref crew to teach your newbies how to be referees. They need to learn the rules anyway. The better they know the rules, the better of a skater they will be when it comes time for them to be in a game. And if for some reason they're not rostered for whatever reason, you have too many skaters, suddenly you have a whole bunch of referees. I thought this was a fabulous idea. There doesn't seem to be any downside. They need to know the rules anyway. Teach them to be a ref. The next one are just some niceties like T-shirts. If your league is printing T-shirts and stuff for the skaters, you really should include the refs. Even if they're not free and there's a charge, make it available to the refs as well. The next one, a lot of leagues have started already doing this. I see this a lot. At the end of a game, they do awards for the skaters, MVPs, best blocker, best jammer, whatever. And they've started doing this for the refs as well. Best ref, best NSO. I think this is a really cool thing. It's not really terribly important, but it's a nicety. And include the refs in the photos. I often never am in these group photos because they always seem to happen somewhere else. Get the refs in the photos. And the next one, I also thought this was a good idea. This is something that someone else suggested. When a new referee shows up to a practice for the first time, there's a couple of things you should probably do. First off, give them the contact information of someone who's going to be sort of like a mentor to them, probably the head rep, something simple like that. And then give them something that would be the equivalent of like a syllabus. You know, when you go to a college class for the first time, you get a syllabus that tells you the instructor's name, his contact information, his office hours, what books you need, you know, the whole thing. You've probably seen them before. There's no reason you can't do something similar for your refs. Okay, this is the head ref's name, this is his contact number. If you have any questions, you contact him. Here's the gear you'll need. Here's some buying tips. Here's some suggested costs and places where you can get them. Here's how it works. Once you get your gear, you then go through the beginning skating class with the newbie skaters. You pass minimum skills. You're taught the rules. You get a written test. You shadow another ref at the game. Then you ref a game, and boom, you're a ref. Give them a step-by-step instructions. It doesn't have to be written down, but I think it's a cool idea, and I'm going to start doing this myself. I'm going to write it down so they know exactly what to expect well in advance. There isn't any surprises, and I think this is a great idea. Another one is to keep your staff informed. Now, when there's a game, oftentimes the head ref will create a Facebook group chat, and they'll put all the staff members in there. But some leagues don't do that. And the problem is they're sometimes left out of the loop on things. For example, I had one game that got canceled. I drove all the way down there, the venue's closed. I was the only visiting ref, was the problem. They told their own team, they told the visiting team, there was no group chat, they never told their staff, and since I was the only out-of-town staff, I was the only one that showed up to find the place empty. And you really should keep them informed and give them information about the venue. Every time I find myself reffing at a venue that I've never been to before, I always have a whole list of questions. What's the venue like? What's the skating surface like? What should I know about parking? Things like that. I shouldn't have to ask. Give that information to your staff. That way they're informed, they know how, if they need to get there early to find parking, what wheels they should bring for the type of surface. Give them all that information in advance. And last but not least, someone suggested that because a lot of leagues have, you know, a president, a vice president, a secretary, things like that, and these people often get together monthly or bi-monthly, and they talk things over and they make decisions and decide what's going to be brought to the group as, you know, to be voted upon and things like that. And they often make those decisions, and it's often behind closed doors. The problem is if there isn't a representative of your reffing staff there, they won't be able to tell you if that idea is somehow detrimental to your support staff. So you should have a representative on that core council in those meetings to tell you, hey, that's a great idea, except if you do that, it's going to be a problem for the refs or the NSOs in this way or that way, in a way that you might not even think of because you may not be a referee yourself. So give them that voice to help them guide you in what they need and what they need to help you. All right, I think that's pretty much everything. Now I'd really like to do a part 2 of this, so if you think there's anything I've missed, you know, just put them in the comments below. You know, if you think your league's doing a great job, you know, tell us about what they're doing. If you're a ref and there's a reason why something that your league or another league has done to make you just not want to ref for them anymore, talk about that. But like I said, do not mention any names. I'll delete any names. This isn't meant to shame anybody. It's meant to start a discussion that I think will be helpful in the long run. So feel free to subscribe and share, and I'll see you in the next one.